All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to your sneak peek of the Smithsonian's National Zoo's Birdhouse. My name is Erica Novak. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the manager of learning innovation at the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. And I really can't tell you how excited we are to be doing this presentation to you today and talk about this birdhouse. The birdhouse is one of our animal exhibits at the National Zoo in DC that's been undergoing a major renovation and will open next year. So many members of the team speaking today have been on the design team for years, and we're all just so excited that we're close to opening now and to be sharing this with you. So before we start, I want to go over the format for today. So we do have a session similar to the others you've been joining. This is 50 minutes long, and we'll be flying you through some of the new aviaries of the birdhouse and concentrating on the themes, including our amazing animals and the conservation, of course. So we will leave time at the end for Q&A. So please use that Q&A feature in your event platform so that we can gather all your questions and be able to answer them at the end for you. So next slide. There are other ways to engage with us as well. You'll see that there is a chat, polls, and then the survey at the end of the session as well. And we will be launching some of those polls kind of behind the scenes throughout. We might not announce all of them. Some of them are more of kind of trivia questions for you to engage with us and learn a little bit more about the birds. So we'll be launching those, and be sure to check that tab as well. If you want to use the chat now and tell us where you're visiting from, and of course, tell us your favorite bird, we'd love to hear. And next slide, please. It really does take a flock to do any major renovation and any major project. So we couldn't have just one or two people here today. We really wanted to bring forth a team that's been working together really hard and passionately to share the design, the education, the interpretation, the science, and the animal care as part of this new birdhouse that you're going to learn about. So we have Matt Sellers, landscape architect, Jessica Greensmith, volunteer engagement specialist, Sarah Halliger, curator of birds, and then from the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, we have Mary Dienlein, education specialist, and Dr. Brian Evans, research ecologist. So you'll hear from everybody today. And next slide. So for our goals for today, of course, first and foremost, I hope that you will just be excited along with us, excited about the opening of the birdhouse, and then aware of some of the associated programs and resources that it offers to teachers, both near and far. We'd love you to see that birds and migration are really rich themes for cross-curricular learning. So that really integrates English language arts, science, social studies, visual arts, and foreign language. And then we want you to understand that learning about migratory birds really connects students with nature, broadens their worldview, and encourages them to think of themselves as global citizens. So I see some people joining us from really close by in DC and Arlington, Virginia. So welcome. And I'm going to turn it over to Mary now to talk to us about the theme of the birdhouse.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. The new birdhouse is going to shine a spotlight on migratory birds of the Americas. And that circular diagram that you see in the center of this slide is one that will appear throughout the birdhouse. It represents the annual cycle of the birds that we're highlighting and showing that in the spring, birds head north to places where they'll stay through the summer to nest and raise their young. And then in the fall, they head south to places where they'll stay through the northern winter. Now, a central theme of the new birdhouse is that bird migration connects people and places throughout the Americas. And the map you see on the right, which will greet visitors as they enter the birdhouse, it hints at this theme. It shows just a few of the many routes that migratory birds take as they traverse the Americas on their annual journeys. There are at least 350 species of migratory birds that breed in North America and winter south of the US-Mexico border. if we were to show all the routes that these birds take, it would look like an incredibly complex web with threads connecting virtually every part of North, Central, and South America. Now, I'm hoping that by the end of today's presentation, you will all agree that migratory birds are a fascinating portal into learning about our interconnected world. Back to you, Erica.
Great, thank you. So next I want to turn it over to Matt and Sarah as a combined team here, so that they can tell us about the species represented in the birdhouse, at least some of them. I know there will be a lot. A little bit about their stories and how that's represented in the design and the immersive experience for our guests.
Thanks, Erica. I'll take it. So building off of the diagram you just saw on the previous slide, we have 3 aviaries that Sarah and I are going to give you a quick tour of. And they are based on the overwintering season that we have in the Coffee Farm Aviary, the breeding in Prairie Pothole, and then the northern migration, which we describe in the Delaware Bay Aviary. But before we get to those, I did want to spend a second in the garden outside of the building and just share this rendering, which shows you the new renovated building, the historic sort of 1920s, 1930s building in the background, and then the new addition in the front. But importantly, the garden I want to talk about, because it is sort of the starting point for another theme that we're trying to emphasize throughout the building, and that is living a bird-friendly life. So here it's about the species of plants that we've selected, trees, shrubs, grasses, perennials, all that provide food and habitat for a collection of not only the resident birds that live here year round, but also the migrating birds that come through from time to time. So with that, let's go ahead and step to the next slide, and we'll start at the first aviary, which is Delaware Bay, and I'll hand it off to Sarah.
All right, well, thank you, Matt. So as Matt mentioned, the first aviary that you will encounter is the Delaware Bay. And this is an area of North America that if you live in this part of the country, you're probably quite familiar with, because it's literally just a couple hours away. And the Delaware Bay each aviary focuses on several different themes. And this one focuses on the importance of the stopover grounds for migrating birds. And we're telling this story using shorebirds as an example. So you will enter the Delaware Bay and you will be surrounded on either side. You're going to walk through a central path and you will be surrounded on either side by shorebirds that you would encounter if you were actually visiting the Delaware Bay. And the Delaware Bay, you'll see on the slide that's being shown now, there's horseshoe crabs. And you may be wondering, well, why are we showing horseshoe crabs? And that's because horseshoe crabs are a keystone species of the Delaware Bay. And that's really important to migrating shorebirds. So shorebirds around the world are one of the fastest declining groups of birds, and shorebirds in North America are really in trouble. And one of the reasons they're in trouble is because of the decline in horseshoe crabs. So for millions of years, horseshoe crabs and shorebirds lived in harmony. The shorebirds would migrate up from the southern parts of the hemisphere. They would stop over at the Delaware Bay and feast on just billions and billions of horseshoe crab eggs. Well, for various reasons, horseshoe crab populations have crashed. And because of that, shorebird populations are also crashing. So we're really excited to bring these shorebirds and these horseshoe crabs into the aviary. We will have live horseshoe crabs with the shorebirds and tell this really important story. And one of the great things that is so unique about this birdhouse is there's so many easy things that people can do to save birds. And in the shorebird aviary, for example, when you visit the beach, you can keep your dog on a leash and protect shorebird habitat. You can pick up plastic. There's so many ways that we will be able to help people understand how what they may perceive as little actually has major importance and significance for saving birds. And so that's what I'm really excited about with this aviary, is getting people seeing these beautiful shorebirds and helping them understand how we can save them for the future. I think I'll turn it over to the next slide, which I guess, Matt, is that me again? I kind of covered it. This picture actually was one of our recent field trips this past spring, and shows the bay and how really the shorebird researchers are on the beach catching these birds, studying their ecology. Some of this research has been going on for about 25 years and is so critical to us telling the story. And we're working very closely with these researchers to get their story out. So I think now I'll turn it over to the next slide. You're muted, Matt.
Sorry about that. Here we have a rendering of the aviary, the Delaware Bay Aviary. So we want to create aviaries that are not only sort of safe and healthy environments for the birds, but we want to make it like inclusive and environments that make you feel as if you are in the environment that we're talking about. Because we want to make not only connections to birds, but also to the environments that they thrive in. So a few characteristics that each of them will have are an abundance of natural light, as you can see here through the skylights that line the entire space, as well as water is in each of the aviaries. Here we have 4 pools, some freshwater, some saltwater, just as you would find out at Delaware Bay. And we have what I'll call sculpted rock work, which is another way of saying fake rocks, but we have that throughout each of the aviaries as well, to mimic some of the landforms that you'd find. So in this case, it's the sandy dunes along the shoreline. And of course, then we'll have landscape that each environment has. And again, these birds rely on. And in the case of Delaware Bay, we even have washed up logs that we've collected from the shores of Maryland and brought to the zoo, so that not only it kind of makes you, that looks a little more like the bay, but also the birds will find a nice perch place on them as well. So let's look at the next slide, and you'll see just a brief shot of where we are currently in construction. So this is the exact same space from about the same angle. And you see that we have a lot of work to do still ahead of us. A lot of work is complete, but we still have a few more months of heavy work and heavy lifting before we can open up next year. I'll just mention right now, we have waterproofing testing going on in these pools. So you see on the left-hand side, that'll be a pool in the future. It's now filled with water. We're making sure that it's all watertight before we start all the finishes. It's good to figure that out now before we go forward. So that is the first aviary. Let's now move on to the next aviary, which is the prairie pothole. Back to Sarah.
All right, thank you, Matt. So the prairie pothole, I think, is a really fun aviary because it features ducks, also known as waterfowl. And I mean, ducks are just fun, right? So what's great about this aviary, so the prairie pothole is a region of the northern United States and southern Canada. And it's also known as the duck factory of North America, which I just think is hysterical. So this is where ducks, a lot of ducks, go to breed and raise their young. And so where the Delaware Bay focused on the importance of the stopover grounds for migrating birds, the prairie pothole focuses on the importance of the breeding grounds for migrating birds. And in this case, as I mentioned, we are featuring waterfowl or ducks to tell that story. So in the prairie pothole, we will have several species of North American waterfowl, and we'll have some other species that are also found in the prairie pothole. For example, some American avocets and red-winged blackbirds, and maybe some yellow warblers, among other species. And much like the Delaware Bay, where there's a story about not only the importance of the environment and the habitat for the birds, but again, what can you do to help save waterfowl? And there's a lot of great conservation success stories around waterfowl. And again, we'll be talking about how you can help, for example, purchase a duck stamp, which helps save habitat, or, just simply learning about the area. I mean, I have to admit, before this project started, I never heard of the prairie pothole. And so, they're just learning about this habitat and the importance and why it's disappearing and how you can help save it. And, people have, I think, just find ducks attractive and interesting in general. And so this will be an easy aviary, I think especially appealing for kids, because most kids are familiar with, feeding the ducks or something. So that's the sort of the general idea with the prairie pothole. And I think Matt is going to take you through the physical space next.
Sorry. So in this space, we are going from the bay at Delaware to Prairie Pothole, which environmentally it's a collection of shallow, some small, some pretty large pools that are at times dry and at times wet throughout the year. In our aviary, we'll have a wet season. And so, of course, we have pools in this aviary as well. The one large elevated pool right in front of you in the center of the space. And then another shallower pool to the left in the greenhouse. And so in addition, we'll have, of course, landscape, which here, the prairie pothole, the characteristic landscape or plant is really grasses. So it's a collection of grasses that provide protected spaces for ducks and other waterfowl to nest and have their young. So here we have a collection of grasses throughout. And again, I hope we find birds kind of nestling in there as well. I will point out a couple other details that make this space unique. One will be the environmental graphic on all walls of the space. So we have an ginormous panoramic shot of the prairie potholes that a photographer in Canada took for us. And we're having that blown up and we'll apply it to the walls. So you'll see the sculpted rockwork, you'll see the pools, you'll see the grasses, and then beyond, you'll see this photograph of the prairie potholes. It should be very immersive. And also the floor in this aviary will be rubberized surfacing. So it's similar to what you find on a playground. So as you walk in, you kind of see the marsh and you kind of feel the marsh under your feet as well. It should be pretty cool. So all of this plus, the live birds that are all around you, waddling up to you and past you, will make, I think, one heck of an experience for our guests. You can take a look at the next slide. And you'll again see a sort of progress shot. This one, similar to the last one, you see the walls a little bit there behind that lift, and you see the greenhouse off on the side. Still a little bit of work to do before it starts looking as good as that rendering does. Next, our third aviary is the coffee farm aviary. And again, I'll hand it off to Sarah.
All right, thank you, Matt. So our third aviary in the renovated birdhouse focuses on the importance of the wintering grounds for migrating birds. And in this case, we're using songbirds to tell that story. And in this picture is a beautiful wood thrush, which is the bird of Washington, D.C. And the coffee farm is an aviary. This is probably, from an animal care perspective, one of the more complex aviaries to manage. It's filled with native songbirds, but it also has, which were native songbirds that winter over in what we're focusing on is a Central American coffee farm during the what we call winter. And so this area also contains a lot of resident birds to that area. So in addition to songbirds, you will also be finding some resident birds, for example, like lineulated parakeets or band-tailed pigeons or some sort of ground bird, yet to be determined. We're not sure yet. But the focus is on our beautiful native songbirds. And these are birds that we see in our backyards. They're actually starting to leave now because it's migration. But these birds, as we will talk about later, they live in our backyards in the spring and summer, and then they live in other people's backyards in our winter. And so this aviary is really exciting because this is one of the aviaries where, again, every aviary has a message. What can I do to help save our birds? And one of the easy, obvious messages that we will be focusing here is talking about drinking bird-friendly coffee. So bird-friendly coffee is coffee that is grown in the shade and versus coffee grown in the sun. And the reason it's helps save birds is because coffee grown in the shade really supports a wider variety and greater density of wildlife, including birds. And this is such an easy thing to do, drink bird-friendly coffee. Through the pervasive message throughout this house is a lot of it comes from a famous study done several years ago about 3 billion birds. And out of that came 7 simple actions that people can do to save birds. Drink bird-friendly coffee is one of these simple actions that everybody can do every single day. And kids can also help. Kids don't drink coffee, but they can encourage their parents to drink coffee, or, you know, hopefully down the road, there'll be some bird-friendly chocolate. And this is an easy thing that people can do. There's other things that we will be messaging throughout the house, including how to make your windows bird-friendly. Messages like keep your cats indoors, reducing pesticides. This is one of this overarching theme of what can people do to save birds is one of the things I'm most excited about at the birdhouse, because sometimes I think you feel like conservation sometimes can be overwhelming, and these simple changes can really make a difference to save songbirds. So I think, is there a little video next? I think, Erica, about bird-friendly coffee.
Great, thank you. And I saw Tracy asking about some bird-friendly coffee brands. I just put a link in the chat so you can take a look at what goes into making bird-friendly coffee, what the criteria is to meet that standard. And then there are places to buy bird-friendly coffee listed there. So the website is pretty robust with all of that information.
That's great. So the environment that we're creating to represent this bird-friendly coffee farm quite literally is a coffee farm in a way. So the space that you don't get a good sense of in this rendering, but it is the largest volume we're working with. So it allows us to grow larger plants. So we've essentially created one big interior planter. We're bringing in a bunch of soil and getting it to the depths that we can actually plant trees that will get 20, 25 feet tall. As well as shrubs, perennials, a bunch of understory plants. So it'll be a very lush, dense environment. And in fact, we will have coffee plants as well. So we'll have literally a coffee farm. The other aspects, again, a bunch of natural light from an entire skylight of the ceiling. So the whole ceiling is skylights. We have rain bars, which kind of do what they sound like they do. We pump water to bars that are suspended about 20, 30 feet in the sky, and they rain down into the pools below to kind of create a sound effect throughout. In the end, this is going to be, I think, the most immersive environment of the aviaries, and will make you feel like you were literally in a bird-friendly coffee farm. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, which is the current view. This gives you a better sense of the size of the space. It's quite large and quite tall. What you see in front of you is a big lift. That's just a part of the construction. But beyond that, you'll see the dark frames. That is a glass window or wall that separates you between the aviary and the entry lobby. But what it means is that as you come into the building, you'll be able to get a quick view into the big coffee farm aviary and just get a little preview of what's to come. So that's a quick rundown of the 3 aviaries. Thanks again for having us and joining us today. Erica, should I hand it off to you?
Yeah, sure. Next, we're going to bring up Brian, who's going to talk about some of the research and his work, but also some of the engaging experiences that we've been offering for students already. So I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So we can go to the next slide, the video slide. So I'm going to talk about the Bird Observatory, and the Bird Observatory is going to be an awesome place where we can have a year-round banding station. All around the year, we're going to be studying and observing wild birds that visit the birdhouse. And it's a super engaging experience for students because they get to see the birds that are around them every single day up close and get to see what we're learning about how we interact with our environment as people in this area that influence the wildlife around them. And for us, this comes down to banding birds. We put bands on the legs of the birds so we can track individuals around the zoo and around the city over time. And they get to see every part of this process, from putting up nets. My volunteer Kevin here is putting up a net to catch a bird, to seeing the birds as they land in the nets, and we get to take the birds out of the nets. We have to have special training to do so. We take the birds safely out of the nets and we put them in bags, and it's cool and dark in those bags, and they're able to be safe. And then those birds will go back to the bird banding station where we'll study them, and the students and the guests get to be a part of that study. And it's really exciting to be a part of it, to see all the tools that we use as bird banders that they can handle in their hands and play with toy birds, including a scale here where we're measuring a bird, and we put it on the scale, and then we take it out of the bag. And then apparently I stare at the bird for a little while after I take it out of the bag. And then I weigh the bag to see how much the bird weighs. And kids are always shocked at how much the bird weighs. So this bird weighs 5 nickels. That's 25 grams. It's a pretty big bird. And it's a good opportunity to learn about things like adaptation and how birds sort of make their living as a flying creature all around us. And again, with this shot, we just see how awesome it is to see a bird this far up close, to see how its bill is specially adapted to eat different sorts of foods. It's just such a cool experience for me too, but also for students and for guests to get this up close personal view of birds. And that bird I was holding there is a white-throated sparrow. It's a migratory bird, but it actually spends its winters here in Washington, DC, and then spends its summers up in Canada. And it's a good way with these migrating birds in the winter to see how we're connected by migration all across North and South America. It's super amazing. And we get to experience things like the plumage of the birds in ways that we wouldn't experience just looking through binoculars or looking at birds outside of our window. And with this, oh, I love the foot. I'm going to put it on the foot here because students always love this. They notice that the feet look like dinosaur feet and they go crazy, right? It's a great opportunity to talk about evolution because birds are dinosaurs. But importantly, it's also a part of our studies to find out how the birds are doing. So they get to see every part of the process, from putting the bands on birds, and I'm about to measure the wing of a bird here, and they get to see how their arms are like a bird's wings, how they have the same bones that a bird's wings have, but they're adapted differently. Our bones are not quite adapted for flight. And seeing that and connecting that to things like the measurements we're taking is really, I feel, super enriching for students. I just think it's such an awesome experience to see how we study these birds. And students, this is their favorite part every time, the release of the birds back into the environment. And there it goes. They give us a big countdown as the bird flies off. So this next bird, we get really fun birds that are residents too. This next bird is a tufted titmouse. And a tufted titmouse is a super rascal of a bird. For those that know it, it squawks all the time. And they get to see this bird that flies around super fast, but they get to see it up close, and features like that little rosy bit underneath its wing that they wouldn't normally be able to see, they get to see. And they get to really look at the feathers and think about how their surprisingly long tail might help them be adapted to the environment that they live in. So, of course, we're putting the bands on the birds' legs because we are tracking these birds, especially as resident birds, all throughout the year. We're finding out how long they survive with these bands. We're finding out potentially where they go with these bands throughout the zoo. And with the color bands I'm putting on here, they're actually able to, the guests and the students are able to track the birds around the zoo themselves. And with these measurements that we take, they're able to find out how things that we do as residents, as human residents of this environment, influence the birds that are around them. So for example, the length of a bird's wing is going to be determined by their diet when they were in the nest. And that's really, really important because it connects people to the conservation. And here's my favorite part really, is going out into the field with students and going out into the field with guests. And we're going to go out around the birdhouse and we're going to look for these birds. We're going to learn how to identify birds with field guides. And especially, we're going to learn how to take notes to show what we've seen over time, to show ourselves in the future, maybe to show me, maybe to show other people. And those notes, to me, are super empowering because the observations we make in nature is really probably the most important thing that we can do for conservation, because the more we watch, the more we care. And the more we watch, the more we're going to know what the birds around us every day in our lives are going to need, and other wildlife, for their survival. That, I'll pass it on.
Awesome, thank you. I'm always inspired every time that I hear you talking about this. And every time we've done programs with students, they've just loved the opportunity to see these birds that they see maybe even every day up close and understand them just that much better. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to welcome Jess, who's going to talk about kind of how this is translated also into an interactive space at the zoo and some of the other interactives that will happen in the observatory.
Great, thanks Erica and Brian. If you are super excited like we all are by that bird banding video, then you'll really love an exciting area of the birdhouse that we're calling the observatory. So you can see an outline of the space here in that slide. And this space is designed to be a really engaging and hands-on look into the real science that goes into studying and saving birds. Guests will interact with staff and volunteers through demonstrations, activities, and exhibits. There are 3 observation stations in the lab portion. They're semicircular pieces of the map there in purple, and they will feature inquiry-based scalable activities, highlighting each focus of this space, which is connecting with birds, connecting with science, and helping to save birds. So depending on the time of day or time of the year, guests might interact with these activities individually or with a volunteer educator or with a staff member or as part of a class or a group, depending on how you're visiting. You may even experience a live bird banding demo out on the deck. So the left portion of that diagram you see there is a large outdoor space. Might have the chance to practice banding on a plush bird at one of those interactive activity stations, or even take a walk outside to observe real native birds surrounding this exhibit with a guide. Maybe even observe a Smithsonian migratory bird scientist hard at work in their office, which is the space up at the top there of that diagram as well. So there's that indoor space to engage with these hands-on activities, but also that large outdoor space where you can take a step into the real environment and the real science that you just learned about. So we hope to provide several versions of each activity that will promote learning and exploration, both at the zoo and in the classroom and at home, and either individually or with a group. So we're so excited about the versatility of this space and all the potential that this space has to engage a variety of different audiences in so many ways with birds and with science. So now I'm going to pass it back to Erica and Mary.
Great, thank you. So we hope that you're just so excited now and can't wait until the building opens to integrate some of these themes into your own classroom. So we wanted to share ways that you can get involved now, and then of course talk a little bit more about some of those future opportunities as well. But Mary has a great program to share first.
All right, so Bridging the Americas is a cross-cultural conservation education program that's for grades 2 through 4. It uses migratory birds as a theme for integrated cross-disciplinary learning. As part of the program, classrooms in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia are partnered with classrooms in Latin America. This year, our partner classes are in Nicaragua, Colombia, and Venezuela. And the paired classes learn about the migratory birds that connect their communities, about each other's country and culture, and also about the importance of protecting the birds and the habitats that they need throughout their annual cycle. If you are a teacher in Washington, D.C., Maryland, or Virginia, and you are interested in participating or just learning more about the program, you can let us know by submitting an online form that's at the website given on the slide. If you're, no matter where you teach though, if you're interested in using migratory birds as a theme in your classrooms, everyone participating in today's webinar is invited to peruse and use the materials that are associated with the program. And those are found at the same web address. You would just need to enter a password, which is given on the slide, excuse me, BTA for teachers, 4 being the number 4. And what you'll find there will be a variety of materials, including an interdisciplinary unit on migratory birds for grades 2 through 4.
Thank you. And I dropped the link in the chat as well, because I know you can't click the slide there. So you can go to the next slide. All right, so some of the other existing resources that you could use starting now. One of them is a middle school 5-lesson unit called Follow That Bird, a science and technology unit on tracking birds. So this was a really fun project that many of us worked on. And it's all about, just as it says, looking at the science and technology behind the tracking. So from low tech options all the way up to the highest that provide a ton of information about where birds are going and how our scientists are kind of integrating that into their work and what they're looking for. So it's a really neat unit, and that is available on the zoo's website as well. So we can drop these links in the chat too. The next one, we have a lot of career videos and webinars. So you might recognize, although it's like a box within a box now. Matt Sellers is on here again too. So that is one of the unusual careers webinars that we did. So we look at different staff members across the zoo who have lesser known, or as we say, unusual careers. So looking at the career of landscape architect, and specifically Matt talks all about the birdhouse as an example of one of the projects that he's worked on in some of the design plans. So that was a really neat one. And the archive of that is available on the zoo's website. We also have career connections tied to each one of those lessons of Follow That Bird. So we have Eric Slovak, who's the assistant curator of the birdhouse, as well as many people from the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center who are featured in mini videos about their careers as well. So there are some great ways to connect with different career opportunities tied to birds. And then there's Brian again in the middle on the bottom. So that is the bird banding that he was describing. We do have an archive of that that's available on the zoo's website and on the zoo's YouTube as well. So we'll share that link. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and we'll provide all of these for you, but just know that these are all available on the zoo's website. But in that, it's a full banding demonstration where Brian has several live birds and goes through the process. We also look forward to scheduling more of those live so that students can tune in live and ask their questions in real time so that they can get answers directly from Brian. And then we also have some kind of self-guided, self-paced e-learning. So we have one all about birds that you can see was in celebration of World Migratory Bird Day. That's the resource on the right there. So there are several ways that you can already get involved. And then in the future, of course, we're looking forward to those on-site experiences as well as continued virtual opportunities, since we are continuing to be in the world of virtual learning, and will be providing those resources continuously to students and teachers like yourself. So next slide. All right, so other ways to connect with us. We have the National Zoo's website on there, and I know Jess is throwing in a series of links for you in the chat now. If you want to contact us, please feel free, and we can always direct that to another presenter on here, but the nzp-education@si.edu is a great way to reach out to us. And then following all of that information about birds, the latest research, those seven simple actions that Sarah was talking about to save birds, you can follow all that on social media as well with the hashtag #LiveBirdFriendly. So I hope you can join us in participating in some of those resources now. Please add in any other questions you have. I did see one that is about horseshoe crabs to Sarah. Is there anyone raising horseshoe crabs for migratory birds? And maybe you can speak to this, I think, from a wild perspective, but also, are you raising horseshoe crabs for our species?
I have heard of facilities, I assume by raising you mean breeding horseshoe crabs. I have heard of facilities that have had success breeding horseshoe crabs. I believe Baltimore Aquarium was one of those locations. We have a small collection of horseshoe crabs now that are fairly new, so we haven't yet had the opportunity to set them up in a breeding situation. But we do hope down the road that we will be able to raise horseshoe crabs. And but yeah, so it's kind of mixed. It's certainly possible to breed horseshoe crabs in a captive setting. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. And we did have a question earlier on too about some of the rendering photos and if those are real birds. As you saw in some of the construction ones, we're just not at the point yet where the each of the aviaries is populated with our live birds, but we do have live birds, and they will be immersive and walk through aviaries with those live species. So Sarah, while you're still up here too, can you tell us if you have any birds right now at the zoo that are waiting for this building to open like the rest of us?
We have so many birds. So the construction's been going on for several years now, and during that time, behind the scenes, what we have been doing is growing the collection, because this takes a lot of time. Birds have to be sourced, birds have to go through quarantine. It is not a quick process to grow a collection of several hundred birds, if not more, that will live in this new birdhouse. So we have many birds waiting in the wing, no pun intended. And we are super anxious to get them into these aviaries, yes.
Great, thank you. And someone asked as well if classes will be able to book a program when the exhibit opens. I will say, we're still following COVID guidelines, and we still don't have on-site programs happening right now. We're just going to continue to be optimistic about what that looks like and when this building opens. So I'm hoping that the answer to that is yes. Certainly once we have programs available to book, we do have virtual programs that we're offering now that are free and available on our website to book. They're pretty much completely booked, the individual ones, through the rest of this year. But if you email our email address again, that nzp-education@si.edu, we do have a teacher newsletter where we will continue to send out information about new programs as they become available. And Mary, I don't know if you want to speak to anything on site, if Bridging the Americas or anything else will be available or additional once the building opens.
Currently we too aren't doing anything in person, unfortunately. Ordinarily with Bridging the Americas, I go out to the participating classrooms in the fall, and unfortunately I can't do it this year. Yeah, here's hoping that in the spring, when the buildings open, we'll be able to interact in person once again.
Great, thank you. All right, we do have one more poll. I know we're getting close to the end of our time here. We would love to get your input on one of the activities or many of the activities that we might do in the future. So we have a poll you can access now that is asking which of the following activities or resources tied to the new birdhouse interests you the most. So we have the options volunteer guided bird walk on site, short videos of an educator exploring the aviaries, virtual program about technology used to track birds, virtual program about the journey of a migratory bird, self-guided and self-paced e-learning, so even more of that experience, downloadable activities for on-site field trips, and downloadable activities for the classroom. Or if you have some brilliant idea you would like to put in the chat, we are very open to that as we continue development for all of these activities. But we'd love to hear what would be most relevant for you and what you would be interested in adding. All right, and I don't see any more questions in the chat or the Q&A. Oh, sorry, there is one more. Will there be both in-person and virtual school programs at the birdhouse? And the answer is yes. So we know for sure we are preparing the virtual programs now because we can. We can prepare those virtual ones and have the ability to do that. And then, of course, as soon as we have the opportunity to have on-site programs, whether that's booking school programs or going through that observatory that Jess was describing, we will definitely have on-site experiences of many varieties. All right, and I think this is such a great question in here as well. What are your favorite birds, or what bird are you most excited about exhibiting at the new exhibit? Who wants to take this? Brian, do you want to start?
I have an unusual favorite bird. My favorite bird is probably the white-breasted nuthatch.
Why?
It grabs seeds all the time from the feeder and will cache them all around a tree. So they're always walking up and down the trunk of a tree to cache their seeds, and they remember where a good bit of them are and find them again. So they're just fascinating to watch, and they're super cute.
Always love that double reasoning, cute and fascinating.
Brian,
how
always
about you,
has the
Sarah?
best bird
Matt,
stories.
yeah,
I was gonna say Brian always has the best bird stories.
he does. That's true. Anyone else have a favorite they'd like to share? Sarah, do you have one that's been surprising to work with?
I'm rather partial to wood thrush. I have a particular affiliation for any bird that's brown, whether big, small, or anything in between. But the wood thrush, I'm terrible at being able to ID bird calls in the wild. And the wood thrush is one of the few birds that I can actually identify. And we have them in the collection, and we're actually breeding them. And I just think they're beautiful. And I just love wood thrush, but because they're brown, that's why.
Great, thank you. And so we are coming to the end. So just a reminder to take the survey that's also included in the event platform. Really quickly, I see the flamingos are somebody's favorite, and will they still be there? The answer to that is yes, we will still have the flamingos. We just concentrated on the aviaries inside the new birdhouse, but there are several other species exhibited in our Great Flight Aviary, and then also all around the building. And then, of course, the native birds that we're hoping to attract with these bird-friendly plantings that Matt was describing in the beginning. And then somebody else asked, how long does the design process for a project of this scope take? Oh my goodness, I have been on the design team for 6 years, and I know that I'm not the veteran of the team here. So Sarah shaking her head here might be able to say more, but a long, long time. I will leave it at that. As
we started in 2008.
Wow, we started in 2008. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope you'll have fun incorporating birds into your classroom, and stay connected with us. Enjoy the rest of Educator Day.